Sarah Mitchell had been an ER nurse at Mercy General Hospital in San Diego, California for 25 years. Night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., the shift nobody wanted. The shift where the worst cases came in. Gunshots, car accidents, overdoses, stabbings, domestic violence, gang violence, every kind of trauma the city could produce. She was 52 years old, started at the hospital when she was 27, right after she got out. Never worked anywhere else, never wanted to. The ER was her place, her purpose. The controlled chaos, the life and death decisions. The moment when everything hung in the balance and your training either saved someone or didn't. She was good at her job. Very good, the doctors trusted her. The younger nurses learned from her. The patients, when they were conscious enough to notice, saw a calm, professional woman who moved with quiet efficiency. Short brown hair. Practical. No jewelry except a simple watch. Scrubs that had seen better days but were always clean. A stethoscope around her neck. Comfortable shoes for the long shifts. Sarah didn't talk much. Didn't share personal stories. Didn't join the other nurses for after-shift drinks. Just did her job. Clocked out. Went home to her small apartment. Fed her cat. Slept. Came back. For 25 years. Nobody at the hospital really knew her. Knew where she'd been. What she'd done before nursing. Why she sometimes froze when she heard certain sounds. Fireworks. Backfiring cars. Helicopters flying low. Why she kept a photo in her locker that she never showed anyone. A photo of much younger her in desert camouflage, standing with a group of people who looked like they'd been through hell. Until Tuesday night, November 2024, 2:47 a.m. The ambulance bay doors burst open. Paramedics rushing in with a gurney. Male, late 40s, multiple stab wounds, vitals unstable. The patient was conscious, barely, covered in blood, breathing labored, fighting the oxygen mask. Sarah moved into position immediately. Get me a trauma bay. Someone paged Dr. Chen, move. They transferred him to the bay. Sarah started cutting away his clothes to assess the wounds. Standard protocol. Find the bleeds. Stop them. Stabilize. Her scissors worked quickly. Shirt came away. And that's when she saw them. 8 scars, running across his chest and abdomen in a specific pattern that made her hands freeze mid-cut. Not random scars, not surgical scars, combat scars. IED blast pattern. She knew because she'd treated that exact pattern before, many times, in a place very far from San Diego. Sarah's breath caught. Her hands started shaking. The scissors fell from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The patient turned his head, looked at her through pain-glazed eyes, and Sarah whispered one word, so quietly that only he could hear. Fallujah. The patient's eyes snapped into focus. Through the pain, through the blood loss, through everything. He stared at her, really looked at her. What did you say? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her voice cracked. Fallujah, November 2004, second battle. You were there. The patient tried to sit up, winced, fell back. How do you know that? How do you... Sarah pulled her stethoscope off, set it down with trembling hands, lifted her left sleeve, and there on her forearm, faded but unmistakable, was a tattoo. Operation Phantom Fury, November 2004. Army Combat Medic. The patient stared at the tattoo, then at her face, recognition dawning through the fog of pain and shock. You're Doc Mitchell. Oh my God, you're Doc Mitchell. Sarah nodded, tears running down her face now. Not professional, not controlled. Just raw emotion breaking through 20 years of carefully maintained walls. I'm Doc Mitchell. And you're Corporal Davis, Marcus Davis, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. Charlie Company. Marcus's face crumpled. 20 years of his own walls crashing down in a trauma bay in San Diego. You saved my life. That IED, I was dying. Everyone said I was dead. But you wouldn't let me die. I remember, Sarah whispered. I remember everything. If this story of a nurse who recognized the exact scars she treated in combat 20 years ago already has you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe. What happens when an ER nurse's carefully hidden past collides with a patient she thought died in Fallujah will prove that some wounds never heal, some memories never fade, and some reunions are 20 years overdue. Now, let's go back to Iraq, November 2004, to understand why Sarah Mitchell became a nurse instead of staying in the Army Operation Phantom Fury, the Second Battle of Fallujah, the bloodiest urban combat the U.S. military had seen since Vietnam. Specialist Sarah Mitchell, 27 years old, was an Army combat medic attached to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, Charlie Company. She was one of only 3 women embedded with the Marines for the assault. The Marines were pushing through the city, house by house, block by block. The insurgents fought from every building, every room, every corner. November 12th, day 8 of the battle. Charlie Company was clearing a residential sector when the IED went off. The explosion was massive. Hidden in a building the Marines were about to enter. Command detonated, designed to kill as many as possible. The blast threw 8 Marines. Shrapnel everywhere, fire, smoke, screaming. Sarah was 30 feet away. The blast knocked her down, ears ringing. But she was up immediately, running toward the carnage. Corpsmen up! Corpsmen up! The call came from multiple directions. But Sarah was Army, not Navy. The Marines called for corpsmen. But she was there, so she ran anyway. 8 wounded Marines, all critical. She did rapid triage. Who could be saved? Who couldn't? The terrible calculus of combat medicine. 4 were dead or dying. Nothing she could do. 4 might make it if she worked fast enough. Corporal Marcus Davis was the worst of the 4. 24 years old. Multiple shrapnel wounds across his chest and abdomen. Bleeding from 8 different entry points. Going into shock, Sarah went to him first. Dropped to her knees in the blood and debris. Davis! Marcus, stay with me. Look at me. His eyes were unfocused, glazing over. He was dying. Sarah worked faster than she'd ever worked. Bandages, quick clot, pressure, trying to stop 8 different bleeds simultaneously. I can't breathe, Marcus gasped. Yes, you can. You're a Marine. Marines don't die in Fallujah. You're going home. You hear me? You're going home. Other medics arrived, started working on the other wounded. Sarah didn't look up, didn't stop, focused entirely on keeping Marcus Davis alive. She worked on him for 18 minutes, until the medevac arrived, until they loaded him onto the helicopter. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Marcus grabbed her hand, weak, barely conscious. Doc, what's your name? Mitchell. Specialist Sarah Mitchell, thank you. Doc Mitchell, thank you. And then he was gone, loaded into the helicopter. Flying away toward the combat hospital, Sarah stood there, covered in his blood, covered in everyone's blood, her hands shaking. The staff sergeant came over. Good work, Mitchell. You saved 4 today. 4 Marines going home because of you. But Sarah couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing the blood, the wounds, the eyes of the ones she couldn't save. She finished her deployment. Came home in 2005, honorably discharged. Army Commendation Medal with Valor Device. Combat Medical Badge. Purple Heart for wounds she'd taken from another IED 2 weeks after saving Marcus. but she couldn't talk about it, couldn't process it. The memories were too raw, too present. She enrolled in nursing school, channeled everything into becoming an RN. If she couldn't save people in combat anymore, she'd save them at home. 25 years at Mercy General. Thousands of patients. Countless lives saved, but she never forgot the ones from Fallujah. Especially the 4 she'd triaged. The 4 she'd fought to save. She'd tried to find out what happened to them, but the records were classified. The unit had been reassigned. She had no way to know if Marcus Davis had survived his wounds. She assumed he hadn't. The injuries were too severe, the bleeding too extensive. He'd probably died on the medevac or in surgery, so she carried him with her, along with all the others, the weight that combat medics carry forever until tonight. When he walked through her ER doors, 20 years later, alive, Sarah stood in the trauma bay, staring at Marcus Davis, 20 years older, alive, bleeding from stab wounds but alive. Dr. Chen burst into the room. "What have we got?" Sarah snapped back into professional mode, wiped her eyes. Multiple stab wounds, 4 entries, none immediately life-threatening. "He's stable." Dr. Chen looked at her. "Sarah, are you okay? You look, I'm fine. Let's save him." They worked together, cleaned the wounds, sutured, stabilized, standard trauma protocol. Marcus kept his eyes on Sarah the entire time, not speaking, just watching, recognizing. When Dr. Chen stepped out to update the police, this was a stabbing. They needed statements. Sarah found herself alone with Marcus for a moment. "I thought you were dead," she said quietly. "Your wounds were so severe. I assumed you didn't make it." "I almost didn't," Marcus said. His voice was stronger now, pain medication kicking in. "I was in surgery for 9 hours. Lost so much blood they didn't think I'd wake up. But I did. And when I woke up, the first thing I asked was, 'Where's Doc Mitchell?'" Sarah's hands stilled on the bandage she was adjusting. "They told me you'd already rotated out. Gone back to your unit. I never got to thank you. Never got to tell you that you saved my life. That every day I've lived since November 2004 is because of you. I was just doing my job." "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "You were doing more than your job. The corpsman told me later. He said you worked on me for 18 minutes, while the firefight was still happening, while rounds were still coming in. You could have moved to cover. You stayed with me. You chose to save me when you could have saved yourself." Sarah sat down in the chair beside the bed. 25 years of holding everything in, everything she'd seen, everything she'd done, everything she'd lost. "I lost 4 that day," she said quietly. "Before you. I triaged 8 Marines. 4 were already gone. I made the choice. You and 3 others. I chose who lived and who died, and I've carried that every single day for 20 years. But we lived," Marcus said, "because of your choice, because of your skill, because you were there." "What happened to the others? The other 3? Rodriguez made it. Last I heard, he's a police officer in Texas. Peterson made it. He's a teacher in Michigan. Williams." Marcus paused. "Williams died 6 years ago. Cancer. But he lived 12 more years than he should have because you saved him in Fallujah." Sarah closed her eyes. 3 out of 4. Not perfect, but 3 lives, 3 families, 3 futures that existed because of 18 minutes in Fallujah. "What about you?" she asked. "What have you been doing for 20 years?" "Everything," Marcus said. "I got married. Had 2 kids. They're teenagers now. I became a firefighter. Ironic, right? You saved me from bleeding out, so I spend my life running into burning buildings. I coached Little League. I volunteered at the VA. I lived, Doc. I lived a full life. Because of you," Sarah was crying again. Not trying to hide it anymore. I became a nurse because of Fallujah, she said, because I couldn't save everyone. But I thought maybe if I worked in an ER, if I was there every night when the trauma came in, maybe I could save enough people to balance the scales, to make up for the ones I lost. You don't need to balance anything, Marcus said. You saved me. You saved Rodriguez. You saved Peterson. You gave Williams 12 more years with his family. That's not a debt. That's a gift you gave us. And we've been living it every day for 20 years. Marcus was discharged from the hospital. Stab wounds healing well. The attack had been a mugging gone wrong. Wrong place, wrong time. But he was alive. He asked for Sarah before he left. She came to his room on her break. I want you to meet someone, he said. His wife was there. A kind-looking woman in her 40s. 2 teenagers. A boy and a girl. This is my family, Marcus said. Emily, my wife. Marcus Jr., 16. Sarah, 14. Sarah's breath caught. You named your daughter Sarah. After you, Marcus said simply. After the woman who gave me the chance to have a family. We told her about you, about what you did. She knows she's named after a hero. The teenage girl stepped forward, shy, but determined. Thank you for saving my dad. I know it was a long time ago, but thank you for giving me a chance to exist. Sarah hugged her. This girl who wouldn't be here if Sarah hadn't made the choice to save Marcus in 2004. Sarah's apartment looked different. The walls that had been bare for years now had photos. A photo of her in army uniform. 2004, Fallujah. She'd hidden that photo in her locker for 25 years. Now it was on her wall. A photo of Marcus and his family. Taken at their house. Sarah had been invited to dinner. Had met Rodriguez via video call. He'd told stories about that day. About Doc Mitchell who'd saved his life. A photo of Sarah at the VA hospital. She'd started volunteering there, on her days off, talking to veterans, helping them process trauma, helping them understand that survival wasn't something to feel guilty about. She'd spent 20 years running from Fallujah, 20 years trying to forget, but Marcus had taught her something. You don't forget, you remember, you honor it, you carry it forward. The Marines Corps Association invited Sarah to speak at their annual ball in San Diego. Someone had submitted her name, told them about Doc Mitchell, about Fallujah, about saving 4 Marines. She almost said no. She'd spent 25 years avoiding attention, avoiding recognition, avoiding anything that might make people ask about her past, but Marcus called her. You need to do this. Those Marines need to hear from you. They need to know that combat medics remember, that every save matters, that every life matters. So she went, in a dress, feeling awkward, uncomfortable. The commandant of the Marine Corps was there. He personally thanked her for her service, for her sacrifice, for saving Marines in one of the bloodiest battles of the Iraq War. Specialist Mitchell, he said, the Marine Corps doesn't forget our combat medics. You ran toward the blast when others ran away. You saved 4 Marines that day. Those 4 Marines have gone on to have families, careers, lives. You gave that to them. Thank you. He presented her with a coin, a commandant's coin, the highest honor he could give. And he presented her with something else, a photo, professional, restored. It showed 8 Marines, alive, smiling, taken the day before the IED blast. Young men who had their whole lives ahead of them. 4 of these Marines died in Fallujah, the commandant said. 4 came home. Because of you. This is to help you remember that your choice mattered. That the ones who lived because of you. Sarah stared at the photo. Marcus was there, front row, 24 years old, smiling, not knowing that in 24 hours his life would almost end, and that a young army medic would choose to save him. Sarah was still at Mercy General, still working nights, still saving lives. But she was different now. Lighter. The weight she'd carried for 20 years was still there, but it felt manageable now. Shared. She'd reconnected with other veterans from Fallujah, started attending reunions, telling her story, helping other combat medics process their trauma, their guilt, their memories. Marcus came to visit her at the hospital every month, sometimes with his family, sometimes alone. They'd have coffee in the cafeteria, talk about life, about survival, about moving forward while honoring the past. Young nurses at the hospital started asking Sarah about her tattoo, the one she'd hidden under long sleeves for 25 years. Now she wore short sleeves. Let it show. Operation Phantom Fury, November 2004. Army Combat Medic. And when they asked, she told them the story. About Fallujah, about the 8 Marines, about the choice she'd made. About Marcus Davis walking into her ER 20 years later. She told them because they needed to know. Because the next generation of nurses needed to understand that every patient has a story. Every scar has a history. And sometimes the person you save will walk back into your life 20 years later to say thank you. At 54 years old, Sarah Mitchell received the Soldier's Medal, a military decoration awarded for heroism not involving actual conflict with an enemy. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism during Operation Phantom Fury, Fallujah, Iraq, November 2004. Specialist Sarah Mitchell repeatedly exposed herself to enemy fire while providing life-saving medical treatment to 8 critically wounded Marines. Her actions directly resulted in the survival of 4 Marines who would have otherwise perished. Her courage and skill under fire represent the highest traditions of military service." Marcus Davis was there for the ceremony. So was Rodriguez. They'd both flown to California. Peterson couldn't make it, but sent a video message. They stood with Sarah as the medal was pinned to her uniform, a uniform she'd put back on for the first time in 20 years. 20 years ago, you made a choice, Marcus said in his speech. You chose to save us, to fight for us, to give us a chance at life. Today, we're here to say, your choice mattered. Every day we've lived since November 2004 has been a gift from you. Every moment with our families, every sunrise, every laugh, every tear, all of it exists because you were there, because you didn't give up, because you were Doc Mitchell. Sarah looked at the medal, at the men she'd saved, at the photo of the 8 Marines from 2004. 4 died in Fallujah, heroes, never forgotten. 4 came home, lived, built families, built lives. She'd spent 20 years thinking she'd failed, thinking she hadn't done enough, thinking the 4 she couldn't save defined her service. But standing there, looking at Marcus and Rodriguez, she finally understood. The 4 who lived defined her service too. Maybe even more. Not because saving them was better than losing the others, but because saving them had rippled forward through 20 years, through marriages, through children, through careers spent helping others, through lives lived with purpose and meaning. The scars she'd recognized in her ER that night weren't just medical records. They were proof. Proof that sometimes the battles we fight in the moment echo through decades. Proof that split-second choices can reshape entire futures. Proof that combat medics don't just save bodies. They save everything that comes after. Sarah Mitchell went back to work at Mercy General. Back to the night shift. Back to the trauma bay. But now, when she treated wounded veterans, she looked at their scars differently. Not just as injuries to heal, but as stories. Lives. Futures waiting to unfold. And sometimes late at night when the ER was quiet, she'd touch the tattoo on her arm. Operation Phantom Fury. November 2004, Army Combat Medic. And she'd remember, she was Doc Mitchell. And Doc Mitchell saved lives. 20 years ago, today, tomorrow. Some scars never heal. But some scars are proof that you survived, that you fought, that you mattered. And sometimes, 20 years later, those scars walk back into your ER to say thank you.